There is one lens I can live without when I'm doing landscape photography, especially in the mountains. Let's see what I'm talking about. Hi everyone, Andrea Olivieri here. Today I want to share with you my huge love for a lens I use all the time on my landscape photography. Guess what? So beautiful, isn't it? Okay, I want to clarify that everyone has their own requirements, and what's important to me might not be important to you. So in this video I'm going to focus specifically on landscape photography, and yes, the hero of this video is the Fujinon 50-140mm f2.8R LMOS-WR. That's a long name, and in a moment I tell you what does it mean. I've been using it for almost 4 years. I put it in any kind of condition. I took it with me everywhere. It never failed and never any kind of a malfunctioning. Absolutely fabulous. For me, this lens is not only my favorite one, but in my opinion, unlike a common misconception, this is the most important lens you always have to carry. In this case, I'm not referring to this specific model, but in general, a zoom telephoto lens is an invaluable piece of gear to put in your backpack. It enables me to simplify the overall scene. This is because it allows you to exclude unnecessary elements from your composition and instead focus on layers within the landscape and shapes and form. Not only do longer lenses have the ability to highlight details, shapes and forms within the landscape, but they also appear to compress or foreshorten perspective. Telephoto compression will help a hilly or mountainous backdrop appear larger and more imposing, and creates a sort of stacked effect where objects appear pushed up closer to another. A quick tip: avoid the temptation to frame too tightly. I recommend you to try to retain a degree of breathing space and capture the subject in context with its surroundings. Because this is not a video about the use of the telephoto lens, let's move to what I liked about this lens and a bunch of things that could be improved in a possible future update. Dimensions and weights. The lens is quite big, for 995 grams, 72mm front filter thread. The focal range, the zoom range is from 50mm to 140mm with an equivalent full frame focal length from 76 to 213mm. It doesn't perfectly line up with the 70 to 200, but the range is roughly the same. In terms of aperture, it has a constant maximum aperture of f2.8 and stops down to f22. I don't use the maximum aperture very often, but the f2.8 is a good deal in some situations when I shoot handheld in low light conditions. In terms of exterior features, there are 3 different rings. The aperture ring, which gives you the option to manually select aperture values in thirds stops values, like f2.8, 3.2, 3.5, f4, or to select A, which means auto mode, and control the aperture from within the camera. The second one is the zoom ring. It moves perfectly. It is nicely dampened and as smooth as butter. This is an internally zooming lens, and so the length remains constant regardless of the zoom position. That's something you don't have, for example, with the 16-55mm or other zoom lenses. The third one, the last one, is the focus ring, which I don't use quite often, and in my opinion, like with other Fuji lenses, to make a major focus change, the number of rotation is simply too much. So the process is very slow. It's nowhere near as good as a DSLR lens. You won't enjoy using this lens as an MF lens. So stick with the AF wherever possible. That's why I much prefer to use this lens in autofocus mode. On the side of the lens, there is a switch, basically a on-off switch, and to activate or deactivate the lens stabilization. If you shake the lens while it's powered off, you will hear a fair bit of rattling from the OIS elements that are engaged. This is normal, don't freak out. And the last one, the red label, the WR weather resistant label, which means that these kind of lenses include a rubber ring gasket on the rear of the lens where it joins to the camera mount. Keep in mind that weather-sealed lenses need a weather-sealed camera to be relevant. If your lens is sealed but not the body, then dust or water can still penetrate and ruin the camera and or the lenses. And vice versa, so be aware of that. This isn't a small lens, right? The 50-140 is designed for a heavy use. It's a well-built lens with an all-metal barrel construction and textured in a satin black finish, not plastic. It's like a tank. I take extremely good care of my gear, and after 4 years of work, this lens is almost in perfect condition. Any sort of problem with the switch, loosening the dials, scratches, dust particles inside the lens, anything like that. Also, the front element is still in mint condition. Something I really like about this lens is the tripod foot. The technology that Fuji adopted in this lens is a bit different from other brands, and the color system works differently. First of all, it's not completely removable. There are a couple of knobs that allow you to remove just the foot. Then on the center here, there is a little piece of metal that goes down in there to help to stabilize it. Sometimes if I don't bring with me the tripod, for instance a quick day trip to Venice, I used to remove the tripod foot in a way that is more comfortable and easy to handle, as well as optimizing the space in my backpack. Fujifilm has other nice zoom telephoto lenses like the 55-200, which is a wonderful lens, great image quality, excellent zoom range. Actually, sometimes I would like to have the option of those extra 60mm. And above everything is very, very compact. But the lack of the tripod foot is something I'm not thrilled about, but it makes sense. The 55-200 is smaller, and it's almost half of the weight of the 50-140mm. Anyway, let me explain. There are a couple of reasons why I prefer to have the tripod foot or the tripod collar, whatever. The first one, stability. I can use both a regular body like the XT4 or the XT3 and the smaller XT30, having a perfect balance system. Locking the foot to the tripod, the weight is well distributed from the camera body to the front, so any kind of shaking is mitigated and the entire system is super stable. Locking the camera body directly to the tripod, everything would be very unstable, with good chances to get a blurry image, especially in windy conditions. The issue is even more problematic if we use the short part of the L bracket that, because the frame is truncated, the instability is even worse. So, thanks tripod foot. The second huge why I love the tripod foot is the speed action. Another enormous benefit of having the tripod collar is that I can be so much faster and precise in framing the scene. It's wonderful to be able to switch from the landscape to the portrait orientation without detaching the camera from the ball head in a heartbeat. Leveling the camera, switch the orientation, shooting upon a series, everything is adjusted in a breeze. The lens has 5-stop image stabilization inside and can deliver up to 6 stops when mounted on a camera with an in-body image stabilization like the X-T4. Pretty amazing, I can say. And the optical image stabilization is absolutely great, and it helps to shoot at the extreme zoom focal length. Take note, remember to deactivate the iOS by turning the switch off when you use the lens on the tripod for long exposures. Otherwise, you end up with a 100% blurry shot like this. Right, a question for you. How do you use your telephoto lens and how important is image stabilization for you? Are you more a tripod user or are you more a handheld shooter? Let me know in the comment below. The autofocus system is absolutely brilliant for both photo and video. My requirements in terms of autofocus speed are modest, and I rarely shoot fast-moving objects with this lens. Anyway, the performances are stunning. As I said before, the manual focus should be improved. You will have understood that this is not an in-depth technical review, but because I know that some of you like to see some example with a 100% crop, I shot a sequence of images to show how the sharpness of this lens changes at different focal length and apertures. The Fuji 50-140 is a super sharp lens throughout the entire zoom range and in almost all settings. It's sharp edge to edge at every aperture. Even wide open at f2.8 at 140mm, it's sharp and has almost no distortion or fall off. My go-to aperture settings are around 5.6 or f8, where the lens provides the best results in terms of sharpness. The image quality remains really good at f11 before taking a step back at f16 and f22, where the effect of diffraction starts to kick quite hard, softening the detail. The XF50-140 also produces images with excellent contrast and rich colors at all image settings. The images aren't overly contrasty but provide real depth to the files and lots of latitude in post. I extremely like the way the lens draws in this regard. Distortion isn't an issue at any focal length. The lens also captures images with very even illumination throughout its range. Chromatic aberrations, typically seen as a purple or blue fringes along contrasty edges, are not a problem at all with the Fujifilm 50-140. For sure, there are some things that needs to be improved, like the lens hood. I'm a little bit disappointed. It's plastic, yes, plastic. This is a cheap feeling, almost afterthought lens hood. Honestly, I would have expected, especially consider the price of the lens, a metal lens hood that feels more substantial. The lens hood is hard to put on and twist to lock. I always had an unpleasant experience in the field when I have to use it, especially in the winter or generally in cold weather when I wear my winter gloves. This stuff definitely needs to be redesigned. There is a removable little door through on the bottom of the lens hood, so that if you were using a polarizer, you could use a finger to rotate the filter. I encountered some looseness in the lens mount, and I could slightly rock the lens back and forth a tiny bit while mounted, and more importantly, I felt it rock a little while using it. There is a little bit of wobble. I would have liked the tighter tolerance there. Also worth noting is that the iOS system does create a quiet but audible white noise. You can hear faint whirring pretty much non-stop. And the last one, the tripod collar. Yes, I love it. And it can be freely rotated and locked in any position. And while there are markings at two of the points of the compass, there are sadly no detents to help you feel the perfect alignment at the cardinal points. The tripod foot is not Arca Swiss compatible. It's kind of generic, so you will need to use a quick release plate before mounting it to a tripod. I use a Manfrotto Arca Swiss compatible plate. Alright, conclusions. The 50-140 lens is a very special piece of glass, an outstanding optic. Again, this is my favorite one for landscape photography. It's a high-end tool in every regard. I really do love it. It's very sharp, it's amazingly adept at controlling lens aberration, is built extremely well, focuses fast in good light and has an absolutely incredible good optical stabilization. That said, the price tag of 1,300 almost, and given its size and weight when compared to the 55-100 lens, it's not for everyone. If you want something compact and less obtrusive for travel and all-around shooting, this is probably more than you need. The 55-200 is actually an excellent lens with performances to some degrees very similar to this one and at half the price. So, I hope you found this video useful. Let me know what's your favorite telephoto zoom lens, I'm really curious. And if you have any question, drop me a comment below, I'll be happy to get back to you. As always, thank you for watching. If you are not following me on Instagram, my link is in the description below. Check it out, I post all my work there, updates about my work and workshops, all that kind of stuff. Alright, that's it for this video. I see you in the next one. Ciao!